Get out! Lock him up! You're going down.
Picture a rainy Wednesday morning in Providence, Rhode Island. The kind of grey, dreary morning where the clouds hang low and heavy and everyone walking through the courthouse doors looks like they'd rather be anywhere else. The building is old, built in the 1920s with marble floors that echo every footstep, high ceilings that make voices carry farther than people intend, and that particular smell of old wood, paper and the accumulated anxiety of thousands of people who've passed through seeking justice. It's 9:30 in the morning when James William Carter walked through those doors, and from the moment he enters you can feel the shift in atmosphere, the way eyes track his movement, the way conversations pause mid-sentence as people notice him and make instant unconscious calculations about who he is and why he's here. James Carter is 58 years old, a black man of average height with greying hair cut military short, though most people wouldn't know that's why he keeps it that way. He's wearing work clothes, blue coveralls that have been washed so many times the fabric is soft and faded, with oil stains that won't come out no matter how much detergent you use. His work boots are scuffed and worn at the heels. Over the coveralls he wears a jacket that's seen better days, the kind of coat you keep in your car for emergencies, with a broken zipper that he holds closed with one hand as he walks. He moves with a slight limp, favouring his right leg, a hitch in his step that's become so automatic he probably doesn't even notice it anymore. But everyone else notices it. They notice everything about him. They notice and they judge. As James makes his way down the corridor toward courtroom 3B, the whispers start. They're not loud, not aggressive, just the casual cruelty that people engage in when they think they're among like-minded company, when they assume everyone around them shares their prejudices. A middle-aged white woman in an expensive pantsuit clutches her purse a little tighter as he passes, pulling it from the side of her body where he's walking to the other side, as if his mere proximity might result in theft. Two men in business suits, waiting for their own case to be called, exchange a look that speaks volumes, a look that says, "Here we go again," a look that contains years of assumptions, stereotypes and prejudices that they've never examined, never questioned, never had to face. One of them mutters something to the other, not quite quiet enough. Something about how these cases waste everyone's time, how the court docket is clogged with people who can't follow simple rules, who don't respect the system, who always have some excuse. James hears it. You can see it in the way his jaw tightens, in the way his shoulders square just slightly, in the way his eyes fix on a point straight ahead and refuse to waver. But he doesn't respond. He doesn't turn around. He doesn't engage. He just keeps walking, one foot in front of the other, that slight limp marking each step, until he reaches the courtroom door. A bailiff stands there checking names against a list, and when James gives his name, the bailiff nods him through without really looking at him. Just another name on a long list of cases that need to be processed before lunch. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere isn't any better. The gallery is about half full, people waiting for their own cases or observing other proceedings because they're law students or journalists or just citizens exercising their right to watch justice in action. When James walks down the centre aisle toward the defendant's table, the whispers intensify. A woman in the third row leans toward her companion and says, just loud enough for several people to hear, "Great, another one of these. How many do we have to sit through today?" Her friend responds with a knowing nod, adding something about how they never take responsibility, how it's always someone else's fault, how the system is too lenient. Another voice from somewhere in the back, a man's voice dripping with sarcasm, says something about taxpayer money being wasted, about people who can't even manage to keep a licence current expecting special treatment, about how if you can't follow basic rules, maybe you shouldn't be driving at all. James reaches the defendant's table and sits down carefully, that limp making the motion slightly awkward. He places his worn jacket on the back of the chair and you can see, just for a moment, what he's wearing underneath. But nobody's paying attention to that yet. They're too busy judging the outside, too busy making assumptions based on appearance, too busy confirming their own biases. James folds his hands on the table in front of him and waits, his face composed, dignified, giving away nothing of what he might be feeling. He's been here before, Not in this courtroom specifically, but in this situation, this dynamic, this space where people look at him and see only what they expect to see, only what their prejudices tell them to see. If you've watched this far, you need to understand something crucial about what's about to unfold. This isn't just another traffic court case. This is a moment that will force everyone in this room to confront something ugly about themselves, something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. What you're about to witness will shake you, will make you uncomfortable, will hold up a mirror to prejudices that exist in all of us, whether we want to admit them or not. James William Carter walked into this courtroom expecting nothing more than to pay a fine and get back to his life, back to the 2 jobs he works, back to the responsibilities that weigh on his shoulders every single day. But what he's about to receive is something far more significant than a dismissed ticket. He's about to receive recognition, respect, and an apology from people who should have offered those things the moment he walked through the door. Before we go any further, if you believe that heroes deserve respect, regardless of the colour of their skin, subscribe to this channel right now. If you believe that military service transcends race, religion, and every other artificial division we create between human beings, hit that subscribe button, because what Judge Frank Caprio does in this courtroom will restore your faith that some people still understand what honour truly means. The bailiff stands and calls out in that practiced, official voice that echoes off the courtroom's high ceiling. The state of Rhode Island versus James William Carter. James rises slowly, that limp evident again as he shifts his weight, and remains standing at the defendant's table. Judge Frank Caprio looks up from the file he's been reviewing, and his expression is neutral, professional, the same measured consideration he gives every person who stands before his bench, regardless of who they are or what they've been accused of. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," the judge says, his voice carrying that particular blend of authority and respect that he's cultivated over 3 decades of presiding over cases ranging from the mundane to the tragic. "Please, have a seat and make yourself comfortable." James nods, his voice clear and respectful when he responds. "Good morning, Your Honour. Thank you." It's a simple exchange, polite and professional, exactly what you'd expect in any courtroom in America. But from somewhere in the gallery, from one of those men in business suits who exchanged looks earlier, comes a comment just barely under his breath, but perfectly audible to everyone in the front half of the courtroom. At least this one can speak proper English. The words land like a slap. Several people turn to look at the speaker, some with shock, others with the kind of uncomfortable recognition that comes from hearing someone say out loud what they themselves were thinking silently. Judge Caprio's head snaps up from the file, his eyes finding the source of the comment with laser precision. And when he speaks, his voice is transformed from warm professionalism to steel-edged authority. "I will have absolute silence in this courtroom. The next person who speaks out of turn, who makes any comment about any defendant appearing before this bench, will be removed immediately and may face contempt charges. Is that understood?" The gallery falls silent, but you can feel the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. The man who made the comment shifts in his seat, looking defiant rather than chastised, his expression suggesting he feels he's been unfairly silenced for speaking an uncomfortable truth. Judge Caprio holds his gaze for a long moment before returning his attention to the file, but there's a tightness around his eyes now, awareness that something toxic has entered his courtroom and needs to be addressed. "Mr. Carter," the judge continues, his voice returning to its normal measured tone, though still carrying an edge. "You are charged with operating a motor vehicle with an expired licence and failure to appear at your originally scheduled court date. How do you plead to these charges?" James doesn't hesitate, doesn't try to minimise or deflect. "Guilty on both counts, Your Honour. I don't have an excuse for what I did, but I do have an explanation, if the court is willing to hear it." Judge Caprio nods, setting down the file and giving James his complete attention. "I'm listening, Mr. Carter. Please explain your circumstances." James takes a breath, organising his thoughts, speaking with the kind of careful precision that suggests he's thought about this moment, rehearsed what he needs to say. "Your Honour, my licence expired 8 months ago. I know that's a long time. I know I should have renewed it immediately. The reason I didn't is not an excuse, it's just the reality of my situation. I work 2 jobs. During a day, I'm on the maintenance crew at Mercy Hospital. I've been there 17 years. At night, I work security at Morrison Warehouse. Between those two jobs, I'm working somewhere between 70 and 80 hours a week, depending on the schedule. He pauses, and you can see something in his face, a weariness that goes beyond physical exhaustion, a soul-deep tiredness that comes from carrying too much for too long. The reason I'm working those hours, James continues, his voice steady but carrying an emotional weight that makes several people in the courtroom lean forward unconsciously, is that I'm taking care of my mother. She has stage 4 cancer. She's been fighting it for 3 years now, but the last year has been particularly difficult. She needs round-the-clock care, and I can't afford to put her in a facility. The in-home health aides that Medicare covers only come for a few hours a day. The rest of the time, it's me. So between working to pay for her medications, her treatments, the medical equipment she needs, and actually being there to care for her, to make sure she's not alone, to make sure she has dignity in what time she has left, I just kept putting off going to the DMV. I know that's not acceptable. I know I broke the law. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm just explaining why it happened. The courtroom has gone quieter now, the earlier hostility muted by this glimpse into a life far more complicated and difficult than the simple charges suggested. But from somewhere in the middle rows, a woman's voice cuts through, lower than the previous comment, but still clearly audible, dripping with skepticism. Sob story. They always have one. Judge Caprio's response is immediate and volcanic. He doesn't shout, but his voice carries such authority, such barely restrained anger, that it's more effective than any raised voice could be. Bailiff, I want you to stand by that section of the gallery. If there is one more comment, one more whisper, one more disrespectful sound from anyone observing these proceedings, you will clear that entire section, and I will personally pursue contempt charges against every individual removed. This is not a request. This is an order. The bailiff moves immediately to the area where the comment originated, standing with arms crossed, making his presence and purpose absolutely clear. The woman who spoke looks defiant for a moment, then drops her eyes, but her expression suggests she still believes she was right, that she was just saying what everyone else was thinking. Judge Caprio takes a visible breath, regaining his composure, then turns his attention back to James with a deliberateness that suggests he's making a choice to focus on the person before him rather than the prejudice surrounding him. Mr. Carter, what about the failure to appear charge? That's a separate issue from the expired licence. Can you explain why you missed your originally scheduled court date? James nods, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a worn folder that's clearly been carried and handled many times. Your Honour, the morning of my court appearance, I was at work at the hospital. I had my shift covered for the afternoon, so I could be here at 10 o'clock. But at around 9 in the morning, I got a call from the home health aide. My mother had fallen. She'd gotten up to use the bathroom, lost her balance, hit the floor hard. The aide couldn't lift her alone. I left work immediately, drove home, called 911. We got her to Rhode Island Hospital. She'd fractured her hip. With her cancer, with her weakened bones, it was serious. By the time I got her admitted, got her settled, made sure she was being taken care of, I realised what time it was. It was after 2 in the afternoon. I'd missed my court date by hours. I called the courthouse the next morning, first thing, to explain what happened and to reschedule. I was told that a warrant had already been issued for my arrest for failure to appear. He opens the folder, pulls out several pages of medical records, hospital admission forms, all bearing official stamps and dates. I have all the documentation, Your Honour. Hospital admission record showing my mother was brought in that morning. The timestamp on when I signed the admission paperwork. I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to get out of responsibility. I just need you to understand that I didn't intentionally disrespect this court. I was dealing with a medical emergency involving my mother. Judge Caprio takes the documents from the bailiff, who has walked them up to the bench and reviews them carefully. His expression softens as he reads, taking in the medical details, the timeline, the reality of what James was dealing with that morning. I see here that your mother was hospitalised for a fractured hip complicated by her existing cancer condition. She was in the hospital for 5 days. James nods. Yes, sir. She came home after that, but she's been declining since. The fall really set her back. She's home now in hospice care. That's why I'm working so much. Every shift I can get, I take it, because when she's gone, those medical bills will still be there, and I want to make sure I've done everything I possibly could for her. She raised me alone after my father died. She worked 3 jobs sometimes to keep a roof over our heads. She sacrificed everything for me. This is the least I can do. The courtroom is absolutely silent now. The earlier mockery has evaporated, replaced by an uncomfortable awareness that perhaps, just perhaps, the assumptions made about the man standing at the defendant's table were entirely wrong. Even the people who made the comments earlier are shifting in their seats, though whether from genuine shame or simple discomfort at being called out is impossible to tell. Judge Caprio sets the medical documents down carefully, treating them with a respect that suggests he understands these aren't just papers, they're evidence of a life lived with dignity under crushing circumstances. He looks at James Carter for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that makes everyone in the courtroom aware that something significant is happening, that this has moved beyond a routine traffic case into something deeper, something more meaningful. Mr. Carter, Judge Caprio says slowly, you mentioned you work at Mercy Hospital in maintenance. How long have you been employed there? James seems slightly puzzled by the question, uncertain where the judge is going, but he answers promptly. 17 years, Your Honour. I started there in 2007, after I left my previous career. Judge Caprio picks up on something in that phrasing, something that suggests there's more to the story. Your previous career? What did you do before maintenance work? James hesitates, and for the first time since entering the courtroom, he looks uncomfortable, not with being questioned, but with where the questions are leading. I had different work before, Your Honour. It's not really relevant to why I'm here today. But Judge Caprio, with the instinct that comes from 3 decades of reading people, of knowing when someone is hiding, not out of deception, but out of humility, presses forward. Humour me, Mr. Carter. What was your previous career? James shifts his weight, that limp evident again, and something in his posture changes, becomes straighter despite the physical limitation. I was in the military, Your Honour, United States Marine Corps. The courtroom, which was already quiet, somehow becomes even more silent. Judge Caprio leans forward slightly. You served in the Marines. What years? James's answer comes in that clipped, precise way that military service embeds into a person's speech patterns, a way of communicating that stays with you long after you've taken off the uniform. I enlisted in 1993, sir. Served until 2007. 14 years total. Judge Caprio's voice carries a new tone now, one of deepening respect and growing curiosity. 14 years is a substantial commitment. Did you serve in combat? James nods once, a sharp, controlled movement. Yes, sir. Multiple deployments. Afghanistan in 2003, Iraq in 2004 and 2005. The judge pauses, doing the mental calculation. Iraq in 2005. That would have been during some of the heaviest fighting of the war. James doesn't elaborate, just confirms. Yes, sir. It was a difficult time. Judge Caprio stands now, something he rarely does during proceedings, a gesture that signals to everyone present that what's happening has transcended normal courtroom protocol. Mr. Carter, I'm going to ask you to do something. Would you please stand and remove your jacket? The request hangs in the air, unexpected and confusing to most people in the gallery. James looks uncertain, uncomfortable with the attention, clearly wishing the judge would just move on to sentencing so he can pay whatever fine is required and return to the life that's waiting for him. The jobs, the dying mother, the exhausting routine that defines his existence. Your Honour, I don't think that's necessary. It's not relevant to the charges. But Judge Caprio's voice, while gentle, carries an unmistakable command. Mr. Carter, I'm asking you directly, please remove your jacket. Slowly, reluctantly, James unzips the worn jacket, the one with the broken zipper he'd been holding closed, and shrugs it off his shoulders. Underneath, he's wearing a faded uniform shirt. Not a costume, not something put on for effect, but a genuine military uniform shirt that's been washed and worn countless times. The fabric soft from age, but still bearing the unmistakable insignia of the United States Marine Corps. And on the left side of that shirt, above the pocket, are ribbons and medals. Even from the gallery, people can see them. Rows of coloured ribbons that tell a story most civilians can't fully read, but understand represents service, sacrifice, recognition for things done that most people will never have to do. But one medal stands out immediately, unmistakable to anyone who knows anything about military decorations. The Purple Heart. The medal awarded to those wounded or killed in combat against an enemy force. The courtroom's collective intake of breath is audible, a sound like wind rushing through an open space. Several people actually stand up slightly in their seats to see better. Judge Caprio's voice, when he speaks, is